Welcome to this foundational learning module. I am Matt DeWar. I'm excited to talk about stress prevention and stress intervention. This is really a presentation focusing on two dimensions of healthy self-regulation. So let's get rolling here. The objective is just to understand the impact of stress on self-regulation, and two, apply research-based stress prevention and intervention protocols to improve self-regulation and ultimately emotional resilience. That's the real target that we're aiming at, is emotional resilience, the ability to persist and stay healthy in the face of stress in the moment as well as over time. So the central analogy I like to use with colleagues and with students is the self-regulation bank account. Think of your ability, your physiological ability to deal with stress as a bank account. And as we know, a bank account operates on a very simple principle. You want more assets going in than there are being spent. And so it's up to us to consistently, daily, make self-care deposits into our self-regulation account so that we can pay our stress bills on time. Because when we stop making self-care deposits into our self-regulation bank account, we start going into debt. And when we go into debt, we typically take out self-care loans. And self-care loans are our worst habits, right? Our worst habits are unskillful attempts to manage stress and self-regulate. Let me say that again. Our worst habits are unskillful attempts to manage stress and self-regulate. I'm stressed out. I don't have internal skills, so I drink alcohol. And every time I get stressed out, I drink alcohol. And over time, in the moment, it might take the edge off of stress. That's why people drink alcohol, to feel better. But over time, this habit erodes our ability to be resilient in the face of stress. When you drink alcohol to manage stress, you're no more equipped to deal with subsequent stress. In fact, you might be even put at a disadvantage to deal with subsequent stress, right? And so it's really important to consistently be depositing making self-care deposits. And so the best way to deal with stress is to stay ahead of it. Once you get into the red, once you get into self-regulation debt, it gets so much easier to fall into bad habits. And secondary stress is what is so debilitating. There's primary stress. Primary stress is the inevitable stress of life. Secondary stress are the maladaptive responses that we learn to respond to that stress. So I'll just continue with the alcohol analogy or example. If every time I try to deal with stress by drinking alcohol, the maladaptive response of drinking alcohol is going to become the debilitating stressor over time, not the stressor that the alcohol is attempting to mask. Right? And so we can apply that to eating. We can apply that to negative gossiping. Teachers do this all the time. I see it, that they self-regulate by spreading viral negativity into their office and getting everyone worked up. Whatever our go-to self-sabotaging, maladaptive response to stress is, ultimately, that is exacerbating and perpetuating our stress over time. So it's so important. Stay on point with your self-care deposits. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Stay ahead of stress. So let's start with some of those self-care deposits. Stress prevention. How do we stay ahead of stress? So we stay ahead of stress, number one, by having balanced circadian health. Balanced circadian health is literally the biological basis of self-regulation. What is circadian health? Circadian means about 24. So every cell in your body operates on a 24-hour clock. The problem is they don't all operate inherently on the same 24-hour clock. So what do you need to balance or sync all the 24-hour clocks onto the same 24-hour cycle? Light, sunlight. And where do you need that light? On your eyeballs. People don't realize that the only part of your brain that is outside of your skull, or that has access to the external world, is the back of your eyes, your retinal cells. Otherwise, your brain is in this dark vault. It has no idea what's going on in the external world, except for this small part that it has pushed out of the skull. Eyes originally developed to detect light, not to see. Vision came later, right? So to that end, we have all these cells populating our eyes called melanopsin ganglion cells, and they're populated more densely on the lower half of our eyes. And what they are is they're photon-sensitive cells. And so when you go outside and you register sunlight on your eyes, it communicates to a cluster of cells above the roof of your mouth called, you ready for this? The suprachiasmatic nucleus. And the suprachiasmatic nucleus is like the master conductor of the symphony of your entire biology. And if it's getting the appropriate cues of light, it can tell everything how to operate and when to do its job. This is so important. So circadian health is learning to live appropriately with the sun. And we were able to do this forever and ever and ever until really the advent of the light bulb and electricity. And there's a ton of research showing the deleterious consequences on our health as a result of this. And it's only been exponentially increased here in the last 20 years with computers and phones, because we're on them all night and we're putting light onto our eyes. We're telling our suprachiasmatic nucleus, reset, and it's starting new cycles over and over again in the middle of the night. So what does this do? It disrupts our sleep-wake cycle. And neurobiologists now know that disruptions in circadian rhythm are really the foundation of most, if not all, mental illness and sleep disorders, as well as a whole host of physical disorders, because a disrupted circadian cycle creates systemic inflammation in your body, which leads to a whole host of potential chronic diseases. So what do? The most important thing, two things are the most important. One, try to wake up as close to sunrise as possible. And two, get outside and get 2 to 10 minutes of natural light on your eyes. No glasses, no sunglasses, not through a window. It blocks out the photon energy. You actually need light photons hitting your eyes. And if you are there first thing in the morning when the sun is coming up, it's the contrast. It's called chromatic shift, the spectral contrast between the dark of the sky and the yellow of the sun coming up. It's like nutrition for your eyeballs. And it's literally syncing all the different systems in your body. And it's setting a 16-hour clock from that point of when you're going to start building your urge to sleep. So if you have a hard time falling asleep at night, one of the best things you can do is wake up and view the sun in the morning. Now, in the dead of winter, where it's very cloudy, overcast, and dark, it might take 10 to 15 minutes to get enough photon energy to set your clock. But on a clear morning with a bright sun, 2 minutes to 5 minutes should be enough time. So circadian health is just so important. It's so hard to be regulated in any other way if the most basic level of regulation is off. Oh, and the second thing, is avoid any light on your eyes from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. at the very least. There's actually a part of your brain called the habenula, where when you look at light in that window of time, 11 p.m. to 4 a.m., it's a pro-depressive circuit, and it actually punishes you by making you depressed as a way of, it's hypothesized, negative reinforcement, trying to get you to not engage in that behavior again. Fascinating. Anyways, so second on the list is attention management. We live in the most distracted and cognitively disconnected and emotionally disconnected society the world has ever seen. And we need to learn to start managing our attention. That our attention has become a $1 trillion industry. It is literally hunted for profit. And every time we interface with technology, we're basically encountering the handiwork of neurobiologists who are hired to compel and grab your attention and keep it so you don't go anywhere else. Tristan Harris, you've seen The Social Dilemma, he calls this the race to the brainstem. And these corporations are just vying to steal and keep your attention because it's so profitable. So attention management is learning how to manage your attention. Attention, I talk about in my workbook, the Mindful Breathing Workbook for Teens, I talk about mindful attention. Attention that is selective. You're choosing what you're going to pay attention to and what you're going to ignore. And you're choosing based on your values and principles. It's focused. You have the ability to sustain attention on what you've selected to focus on. It's non-judgmental, right? So you have the ability to observe things like your own emotions without immediately becoming emotionally reactive. And then last, it's flexible, right? Your attention has the ability to move and be flexible so that you're not just getting fixated on one thing and you can't dislodge it from a particular thought or emotion or internal state, etc. The next self-care deposit in your self-regulation account is meaningful social connection. The brain is a social organ. We are so social, and this is what's so hard about being in a pandemic is our number one way to self-regulate is social connection, and yet in the midst of a pandemic, the biggest threat to our health is other people. So there's a lot of emotional and cognitive dissonance that comes with that. No wonder everyone is increasingly stressed out because we just want to connect and be with each other. It's very hard to be isolated and alone. But if you can establish meaningful social connection, whether it's virtually, on a phone, in person, whatever it is, so important to fill up your self-regulation account with that. Cognitive reframing is a wonderful way of preventing distress. I call it the 3 Ps. It's from Ruth King's book. Life is not perfect, it is not permanent, and it is not personal. Just reminding yourself as you start getting stressed out. Often we're getting stressed out because we take things personally. We want them to be permanent and we want them to be perfect. And when they start defying our expectations, we get very angry. So cognitive reframing is just a technique where when you notice you're getting stressed out because you're attached to something, you're attached to a belief, you can step back and identify that it's a distorted belief and that it usually is grounded in making something personal that has nothing to do with you, wanting something to last when you know nothing lasts, and wanting something to be perfect when indeed life is not perfect. So cognitive reframing can be a very, very helpful tool for stress prevention. Physical activity and nourishing food, no-brainers there, right? The stress response is designed to make us move. One of the things that I think makes us so stressed out is that we live in such a emotionally inhibited, we work in emotionally inhibited environments where we can't express how we're feeling, nor can we move. We're usually sedentary, and that's not a good combination. So there's something very cathartic about physical activity, and there's so much research showing the impact of physical activity on mental health and mental health in general, and specifically if you have depression and anxiety, how powerful of a tool physical activity is. And then food, eating nourishing food, not eating sugar, not drinking liquid sugar in the form of beverages, so important. And then learning to develop non-sleep deep rest, right? Meditation, calm, relaxation. You have the ability to inhabit. We're also used to inhabiting the sympathetic end of the nervous system, which is the really active, engaged, alert dimension of our nervous system. But very rarely do we know how to inhabit, without just falling asleep, the parasympathetic dimension of our nervous system. So develop tools to spend some time there, 5, 10, 20 minutes a day, really cultivating non-sleep deep rest within yourself. All of these things are invaluable self-care deposits in our self-regulation bank account. And so no matter how on point we are with our stress prevention. Life is unpredictable, and we cannot escape stress, nor should we want to, right? It's a catalyst for growth. And so we need skills and tools to deal with stress in real time as it arises. And so the research just shows that we have really three ways, three direct avenues to engaging with our physiology when it is stressed and redirect it away from becoming distressed. And that's your vision, your breathing, and your movement. And so your eyes are directly related to your nervous system, and your gaze is very much expressive of where your nervous system is at. And one of the things we now know is that foveal vision is when you're focusing on a specific point in space, increases norepinephrine in the brain, which is a form of adrenaline. It's a stress hormone. So you ever wonder why, after staring at a screen all day, you, one, feel brain dead, and two, very anxious and stressed out? And it's because you're just increasing stress bills in the background all day when the only thing you're doing is focusing, because whatever your eyes are doing, your brain is doing. So if your eyes are focusing, your brain is focusing, and that's spending energy. And you're just depleting your energy slowly in the background the whole time. So be very cognizant of what your eyes are doing. Take eye breaks. One of the best things you can do is, if you have the ability to see a visual horizon on a lake, on a field, somewhere broad and open, there's a reason why we feel so relaxed when we visually can see a horizon. It's because we go into panoramic vision. And when we go into panoramic vision, we access the parasympathetic nervous system, and we pump the brakes on the sympathetic nervous system. So the eyes can be used as a tool. So one thing you can do right now is just sit up straight and open your peripheral vision as you look at me in the screen and see everything in your visual field at once, including your own body. And just doing that allows your eyes and your gaze to span out, and it slowly dampens that sympathetic response. Breathing, you'll see more in my other presentation on mindful breathing. So I'm taking up too much time here, but you'll learn more about that in that presentation. But breathing's an invaluable tool. And then movement, I already described. Movement is, for me personally, probably the go-to tool. If you are stressed out, if you can get your body moving, you're sending all sorts of important feedback signals biologically, physiologically to your brain, saying you can shut down the stress response and calm down. So practice. Pay attention to your vision and how you use your eyes throughout the day. Pay attention to your breathing. Noticing and letting go of any unnecessary effort. We'll talk more in that presentation about that. And then use movement to shut down the stress response. And resources for continued learning. The Mindful Breathing Workbook for Teens, my workbook that just came out this August. I get into all of this. In fact, I have a whole chapter. I think it's the last section on this whole idea of the bank account and the different self-care deposits that we can make. Stress Teens, if you go to Stress Teens, just Google Stress Teens, Gina Biegel. She's got a wonderful program. She also has a book with New Harbinger that is called, I have it right here on my bookshelf, Stress Reduction Workbook for Teens. It's another great one. And then Brainstorm by Dan Siegel. Dan Siegel's just written a number of tremendous books on topics related to this presentation. So hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next presentation.